With everything going on in the world, people need to be uplifted. They need something that promotes character, creativity, confidence, and joy. The GRN show is not just an average talk show. The topics are powerful and will make you think. Join me on this journey to be informed, to relate, to connect, and to evolve.
Good evening and welcome to the GRN show. A time to be informed, to relate, connect, and evolve. Earlier this month, President Joe Biden proclaimed June 19th or Juneteenth a federal holiday. But in reality, Juneteenth occurred since 1865. And, many of the states celebrate more on a ceremonial basis rather than holiday. And it's really a celebration of the freedom of the slaves in 1865, almost 200 years ago. And I have seen here in the South Florida area, there are always prayer meetings, food, music, games, and other activities to promote cultural awareness in the community. So today we're going to address how will this federal holiday be celebrated and how will it impact us in the workplace. I also want to talk a little bit about how will it enhance our nation's commitment to inclusion, equal justice, to truly fulfill the promise of freedom as described in the U.S. Constitution. So tonight we have two phenomenal women as our guests. They are Donna Raphael. Donna, good evening. How are you?
I'm very well. Good evening. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And also with us, we have Marie LaPlante, who's the president of the HR group, the HR Right group and Staffing Solutions. Marie, welcome.
Thank you, Gitel. Thank you for having me. It's a
Well,
pleasure
I
to
have
be
to
here.
tell you, I'm really excited to have both of you because this is a topic that we all have been hearing about. Even some youth are saying, does that mean we don't have school? Does that mean, they're asking a lot of questions about it. So I think it is appropriate post the celebration to really kind of chat a little bit and kind of see what does it really mean. So Donna, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about the historical legacy of Juneteenth and why it's so important for us at this time.
I think one of the most important things for us to be able to understand about Juneteenth, so it's June and the 19th. That the two words are actually put together to create Juneteenth, which occurred in 1865. But what didn't happen was in Galveston, Texas, they were unaware, the slaves were unaware that 3 years prior to that, that the other slaves around the country had already been, and in the South had already been freed. And so the impact of them finding out by the Union soldiers 3 years later is what really has been so historically misleading in terms of our information about the emancipation of slavery, because it happened in segments, and a lot of times
Hmm.
people are unaware of that. We thought it all happened and there's this big celebration on July 4th, but in fact that did not happen in that way, and there were groups of people that were unaware that they had been freed almost 3 years. And so, that I think that that's probably the most impactful thing that we really have learned over the years.
And it's interesting because I'm reading everywhere. It's like a second Independence Day.
Mm-mm.
That's correct.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
and Marie, being the HR guru that you are, what does that mean for employers first?
Yes, and as Donna just stated, it's a bit confusing
Mhm.
because so many understand different, so many have different meanings for Juneteenth of or the reason we are celebrating Juneteenth.
Right.
Now let's talk about the fact that our president just enacted it into law.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we know multiple employers celebrate or commemorate the day in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Some would give the employees a day off here and there. Others would just say it's a day where that slavery ended, right? But the truth of the matter is, while employers want to do all these nice things for employees, give them a time off here and there, giving them a floating time, it is important for them to train and teach that it's not just a Black holiday. It's not the
Mm-hmm.
Black people's holiday. It's
Mm-hmm.
the American history. So here is an opportunity. Now, we know every time there are changes, we should take opportunities. Opportunities occur with changes, right? And so
Right.
to me, here is an opportunity that employers can use to A, educate the workforce,
Mm-hmm.
right? Very important to enhance this unique day for Black people, for Black Americans.
So,
But why not making sure, I'm sorry, Gitel, you were going to say
no, go
something.
ahead, finish, please.
Why not making sure that this unique day, we elevate it, we teach people,
Mm-hmm.
if we currently have a diversity and inclusion program, we enhance it.
That's
If we
true.
didn't have one, we create one and give an opportunity to keep the workforce engaged and talk
And
about.
you talk about that. I think it's very important. But I am thinking about many of our workers who are in the hospitality industry, who are in the healthcare industry. They're so busy working. There are times they're working two jobs. And I really want them to understand what does this holiday mean for them from a standpoint of their pay, from a standpoint of the benefits that comes with the holiday. Is it every state that will do that? Please let us let's talk a little bit about that because I think that's the one everybody
Is asking for. Okay, so it's a federal holiday. So the holiday is really for employees that are federal employees. So
Mm,
it's not a national holiday, meaning certain state, not every state observe the day as a holiday. So we must understand that. We have to stay abreast, especially HR professionals,
mhm.
knowing when the state in which you are working in, has made it law, then it's time for you to update your policy and then ensuring that you provide training so that everyone is aware that it is now a holiday for your state. But today, it has been made a federal holiday, meaning federal employees
Got it.
would have that holiday as a
Awesome.
day
Thank
off.
you so much for that clarification because actually the county had something on their agenda a couple of weeks ago to make Juneteenth a holiday to give county employees the day off. Unfortunately, it did not pass.
Yes,
And I understand there's been legislation as well at the state level that did not pass. So Florida
that's
is
correct.
not one of those states that really would honor this particular holiday, especially now.
And as you
So,
say, for people in the healthcare industry,
Yeah.
it would really be great for them to have this extra day because they do work very hard.
even the extra day or the extra pay, because people with a schedule, and quite often it's a holiday, they're working, they get either double pay, there are a little bit of incentive for
Precisely.
others to really work. So those benefits, it would be really wonderful to see them transferred to the
Precisely.
employees.
Yes.
I think it might also be important, obviously from state to state, right? So I'm actually in New York, and I work for a nonprofit organization that was actually very forward thinking and um, giving all of the employees the day off. We actually had the day off.
Wonderful.
It was announced even prior to President Biden, signing legislation for the federal holidays. So we had already been given the day, and that was great. But what I think is going to be important is for employers to not only, if you're in an industry where individuals are not able to take the day off, and while we're always talking a little bit about or addressing the subject around reparations, this is just a minor way that
Mm,
employers who are not able to give their employees the day off could still pay them, to be able to show some respect that although
yes.
they're coming in a service industry, they still monetary benefit for that particular day.
You brought up a very good point. There's been a lot of buzz about reparations,
Mhm.
and I'm not sure if all of our viewers know what it is. Can you just touch on that a little bit, Donna?
Certainly, and it'll be very minor in fact that one of the things that across the country, and there's a lot of discussion around reparations because um, during the at the end of slavery, there was a legislative and there was an opportunity for some ex-slaves to receive 40 acres and a mule. That did
Mm,
not happen for every ex-slave, and many others that have had their land stolen. When we start to talk about other areas in history, there's never been this total discussion and intentional focus on repaying the debt to African Americans, based on what has happened to us, even if it was 400 years ago, even if it is
wow.
reparations that is in a monetary effect. So, we're still dealing with historically all of the damage that was done all those years ago. So, the land, when we talk about generational wealth, all of that we do not have. We are always starting in a place that is far behind other groups, primarily because we were never paid forward what we were.
Mhm.
And so while, when we start to talk about reparations, everyone gets all upset and, excited about that we're going to take something, forgetting that things were taken from us.
Mhm.
And so we were never repaired and never made whole. And so if one simple way to do that is at least a start by giving those individuals that are at least from the service industry, if we didn't learn anything during COVID, that service industry was our number one individuals that should have been cared for. And they were our essential workers. I can't
Mhm.
even tell you that when we start to take a look at, who was, again, mostly damaged and mostly affected by even COVID, although we're not talking about them, just talking primarily about the idea that we've never really been made whole. Each
Mhm.
and every time there's any kind of incident or disaster, you always look to see that we'll never get to the same starting line. And reparations is one way, not the only way, but one way to start to make our people whole.
Good point. Thank you for pointing that out. And Marie, I'm going to go back to the workplace again.
Sure.
Obviously, people plan their vacations,
Yeah.
people around the holidays. So
Sure.
I'm this new employee. I come to the office. I say, oh, we have a new holiday. Tell me about the company's policy. So what would you tell this employee? How does this employee find out about what their organization is doing?
Okay, so human resources, the human resources professional is always whom one would go to. And of course, I always tell human resources expectations need to be clearly defined,
Yes.
whether it's going to be in the employee manual, whether it's going to be verbally, preferably in the employee manual. So, for example, when someone is new, you provide them with a manual. So, let's say in the situation of Juneteenth,
Hmm.
we have a new policy the HR professional needs to clearly define what does that entail. And that needs to be updated and included in that manual, right? You need to make sure, as the HR professional, you train people about the new policy. What does the policy do? How do you submit that request? So you train the managers, then the managers will train their team. And then you make sure you communicate it, whether you communicate on a billboard, whether you communicate it, via email. You make sure that everyone is aware and is clear on the expectation of that.
Super, super. So is that one of the things that your company does, Donna? You mentioned you guys have been forward thinking and celebrated. How do the employees know it's a holiday, Donna, in your organization?
It was announced. We received information from the CEO of our organization. Really outlining the historical facts related to Juneteenth, which was imperative that we receive that information for those that are. And then in addition to that, we were told that we would have that day off. Interestingly enough, because I want to say that it was very forward thinking, because it was, but I do think that the timing of it for some individuals, because it hadn't been done before, made it a little bit difficult for some employees to enjoy the actual day. But now that we know that this is something that's going to be practiced as an agency and is going to be hopefully built better into our culture structure, then next year we can really plan for it.
Right.
But I do think that, this year that was one way that, that they informed us by email.
And I'm going to ask both of you, I'm going to ask, looking at Juneteenth 2022, in your respective areas, what would be some ideal ways of dealing with this federal holiday, whether or not your state, approves it as such?
Well, I'll start. I can tell you that it was exciting to see the amount of events that Juneteenth. It was extraordinary. From every single town in the area that I live, there was an event. Whether it was an opportunity for people to commune together, whether it was there was shopping or foods, just cultural expressions of what the day meant. Individuals dressed in some traditional African garb and African attire in one event. In another event, you had historical dances and history, storytelling, dances, and so it was really an abundance of events that occurred. And what I'd love to see next year is, now that everyone is aware that it is an opportunity for us to come together, that we do just that, so that we don't have as many events as we had this year, and really build in a community structure that we would embrace and come together and have one large event, so that all of the community doesn't have to choose to go to the east side.
I know. Oh my God, there were so many things.
I was exhausted,
Saturday,
right?
Friday. Good point. And I think there was a lot of excitement in the community, and I have to tell you, in my community, meaning that the Broward County community, there's always been many cultural events. And this year, one of the events I went to, which was just so appropriate, it was the film opening for Mr. and Mrs. Moore. Two individuals who were killed because they, although despite the suppression for voters around that time, they registered so many voters that they got angry with them, and both of them were killed. So this film opening was at one of the churches that allowed them to use their facility for voter registration. So it was amazing. A couple of statues were created. I was really touched, and it kind of That's what to me Juneteenth is all about. So, but anyhow,
Celebration.
Marie,
Yes.
now,
I totally agree with Donna, but what I would add is you imagine Juneteenth was announced 2 days before the actual holiday. And
correct.
you shared with us the multitude of celebration that we've seen around. Great celebration, whether it's poetry, dancing, community gathering. Now, next year, let's look forward. I know next year is going to be an abundance, even more, because then people have time now
Mhm.
to be prepared, to shop, to prepare for better and bigger things.
Right.
So, what I would say is, though I agree with you, I am ready for next year because I can tell you, I did not celebrate. I did not even attend events because I wasn't really aware or prepared, just like I am
Mhm.
sure others were not. But
Mhm.
next year, I can bet you, I guarantee, I'll be ready to party and participate in different events, attend different community activities. I'm excited and I'm looking forward.
And
Yeah.
um, you and I, Marie, we share some of the same skill sets and profession. We have very similar professional backgrounds, but here is one of the things I really think organizations need to consider from the HRN. A lot of companies have what you call paid time off, PTO.
Mhm.
I think that's one of the things they really need to look at, um, so that if an employee says, you know what, although it is not a law in my state, I still want to celebrate that Emancipation Day.
I
So,
agree with you.
that's something that, I hope HR professionals would look at. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens in 2022. So, with that, I really want to say, ladies, you are phenomenal.
Oh,
Thank
you
you
are
so
phenomenal.
much
Thank
Thank you
you.
for
so much,
being
Gitel.
with us. And the dialogue has just been amazing. I appreciate both of you. Thank you. And come back and visit again.
Yes,
Thank
And
and
you.
to
thank you
our
for having
viewers,
us.
we'll be right back. We'll be right back. Hello, Dorothy. Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing well, Gitel. Thank you for asking.
I just had a wonderful conversation with our guest about Juneteenth, this new federal holiday. And we're talking about what will it be like next year. But I am thinking back to my school days. I do not recall learning about the significance of Juneteenth, not even using the word. We knew the slaves were freed in 1865, but I am telling you, it's just so much was not really taught to us at school.
Matter of fact, Gitel, you are 100% right. I don't recall. So today I want to talk about my topic, which is celebrating Juneteenth at work. It's official. Juneteenth is now a federal holiday. With President Biden signing 2 days before the actual holiday, a bill was passed to make it enforced. Many people celebrating this day can use it as a day of learning, part of history of the first day slavery was officially ended. With many businesses and companies trying to make diversity and inclusion part of their work culture, now this official holiday supports this important part of our history. So here are some great ways to celebrate Juneteenth in the workforce as a business and organization. First, One thing that you can do is decorate the office with Juneteenth themes. Whether it's the color, educational information in the lunchroom for employees, this will also allow them to take in and learn about that era and how African Americans have come a very long way since 1865. Secondly, commemorate by bringing in guest speakers during that time. Educate and talk about this holiday with employees in showing how important it is to African Americans. You will be surprised how the employees will engage in such a great way on this topic. And finally, give your employees a paid day off. Even though this was recently enacted, now companies can incorporate this as a selected holiday or even paid day off in support of this new celebrated holiday. So these are my tips for celebrating Juneteenth in the workforce.
I love it. Actually, I think one of the ideas you've given is one I may adopt. The whole concept of decorating my office with the Juneteenth theme. I think it's wonderful. It's not only organization, but individuals, I imagine, can do that as well to
Exactly.
celebrate. So, yeah. So I thank you so much. And then good night and see you next week, Dorothy.
Next week, Gitel. Bye-bye.
Our speakers and Coach Dorothy gave us some great ideas for Juneteenth to be celebrated, as part of our day-to-day lives as well as next year during the holiday. I think having it as a federal holiday is wonderful. Nevertheless, I believe that one of the most basic human rights is currently under attack, and it is our right to vote. Juneteenth is a reminder for us that we are not fully free until we're able to remove systemic racism, voter suppression, economic and social injustice. So, my question to you this evening is how will you give Juneteenth meaning in your day to day life? With that, I want to say thank you for joining us this evening, and until next week,